Welcome everyone to another Saturday morning at our clinic online. We are so excited today to have Ellyn Weiss speaking to us and introduced by our good friend and fellow alumni of the Art Clinic Online, Sondra Arkin, who will introduce Ellen in just a minute. I want to remind you in 2 weeks we have Matt Close, fabulous painter, still life artist, coming to speak with us. And then I guess 2 weeks after that, so in 4 weeks, we have the Art Clinic online figure painting forum presented by Montgomery Art Association. I know that's quite a mouthful, but we're really excited to once again collaborate with Montgomery Art Association. So please join us again when that happens. It should be a lot of fun. But if you don't or haven't seen the video of Sondra Arkin, I would encourage you to go back into our clinic online archives and see her talk. It was fabulous. The October talk just, I know was well enjoyed at the people attended, but also a lot of people are attending or viewing the videos after the fact. So I encourage you to all go check that out. Uh, neatly, I guess the two artists who are here today who are speaking had collaborated with at the Katzen Art Museum, which I'm sure we'll hear more about the Human Flood project. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Sondra Arkin, and she can take it from there.
Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for inviting me and Ellyn, myself. Ellyn and I met in 2002 working on Artomatic, and we have complementary skills for working on projects and also in our friendship. But Ellyn's one of my besties, so that's always good. Like myself, Ellyn's art career is a second one. Her first career was as an environmental lawyer and started as Assistant Attorney General for Environmental Protection for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It stretched to Special Counsel and Director of the Secretary of Energy's Human Radiation Experiments Initiative and Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Office of Environment, Safety, and Health within the U.S. Department of Energy. And sandwiched in there, she was also a partner in a law firm and general counsel for the Union of Concerned Scientists. In our art making, Ellyn and I have both focused on topics that concern us, and we push our abstractions to express a lot of content, I think. Global climate change and the rights of women are two issues that Ellyn works on the most. She serves on the board of directors for the Union of Concerned Scientists and the Churro Center for the Arts in Castle Hill. She was a founding board president of the Touchstone Foundation for the Arts in DC, and she was one of the founders of Artomatic. Jordan had asked at the end of my program last time whether I thought that artists who came from other careers had different ways of making art. I think something like that. And I think I responded that I think it made us a lot more curious, or it made us differently curious. And I think that it really allows us to focus on the things that, drove us in our first careers. I think we look at that. And Ellyn is one of the smartest people I know. And I'm always happy to work with her, although it's definitely a challenge to work on collaborations. And I know Ellyn's going to talk a little bit about that. Since 2017, Ellyn and I ruminated about the plight of folks on a migration path due to climate change. And in our projects, Ellyn is often the one to articulate it all. So it's my pleasure to introduce Ellyn Weiss and have her talk about the kind of projects that we've been involved with in the past, but very primarily on the human flood.
Unlike, I think, let me rewind. I come to this project late. Sondra has talked about Art Clinic Online, and I never quite managed to fit it into my life. I'm so glad you invited me. I went back and looked at a bunch of the presentations, and this is a wonderful archive you have going, Jordan. And I wish more people knew about it. And thanks a lot for inviting me to be part of it. I am not going to talk about the arc of my career, such as it is, and everything that I've done that's led me here. I'm going to focus on one project, and primarily on the human flood, which was at the American University Museum, which is what they want you to call it now because they're an accredited museum, at the Katzen Center last year from January to August, February to August, and will travel, at least a big hunk of it, to Salisbury University on the Eastern Shore, opening February 21st, and a fabulous show. Many of you probably know Jamie McLean. She's now the art department head and gallery director out at Salisbury University, and she put together a really amazing show of 5 different artists in a very large space. She has a wonderful space. And it's called Climate Stories from every angle. And Sondra and I we're invited to hang about, well, we could fit about 70% of the human flood into it. The space that we had at AU was just sort of a once in a lifetime space. It was 7,000 square feet on the inside, 10,000 square feet on the outside. And as Sandra likes to say, when we went in to talk to Jack Rasmussen, the chief curator, and he said, "Do you want all this space?" And we sort of went, "Oh, we hadn't really thought of it, but sure, we can do it. We can do it," which, I think is a good default. We can do it. So we did. It was an amazing, amazing piece of space, and we're very proud of the show. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Okay. For about 10 years, more than 10 years, I have been doing art related to climate change. And this is the 5th or 6th collaborative installation I've done on the subject. Sondra has done 2 of them with me, the last 2. And they've covered issues ranging from the migration of disease vectors from the tropics up north. So we now have West Nile virus endemic in the United States, which it never was before, and lots of other stuff that we prefer not to have contact with. And I did the bleaching of the coral reefs also, and several others. And the last one that Sondra and I did was called Migration of Pestilence. That's the one I just talked about. People moving, disease, disease moving north. And at the end of it, when we took it down, it came to me that the next project should be about the direct effects on human beings. To draw that connection between what we're doing to the planet and how the planet is fighting back against us. And so we did it about climate migration, people forced on the road because the life that they had, very often a subsistence life, fishing or farming, has been made impossible by climate disasters, whether it's the ocean, the sea level rising, the heat rising, a variety of fires, floods, a variety of climate catastrophes that make it no longer possible for millions of people to live in areas of the world where they did for generations, maybe centuries. And so they are on the road trying to find some place where they can live with their families. This is a stream of migration. People migrate for lots of things, warfare, persecution. This is a stream that is large and is growing and will continue to grow. And there's some numbers up there. 36.2 million people just in 2022 displaced by natural disasters caused by or exacerbated by climate change. Many of them found places to resettle in their own countries. Many could not. The estimates are that there may be 1.2 billion climate migrants by 2050, and that's by Zurich Insurance Group, which is not an environmental organization that's, giving you propaganda. They're people that have money, a lot of money on the table. So exact numbers are impossible to establish, but it's a lot of people and it's growing rapidly. This is my story. I think I refer to myself as a straddler, as Sondra said. I come from a first career, and it's all up there. I won't repeat it, but I was in environmental law for 25 years, and for most of that time, when I wasn't in the government, which is a very brief interlude, thank God I'm not anymore, I was general counsel to the Union of Concerned Scientists, which is one of the preeminent international groups that is brought climate change to the fore. We were there 25 years ago, 30 years ago, documenting what was happening in the climate. And that's had a profound impact on me. It still does. I'm still on the board. I've been trying to get off and go emeritus, but so far I haven't been able to pull that off. And then 25 years, more than 25 years now, full-time professional artist. And I think that difference between a good lawyer and a so-so lawyer and a good artist and a so-so artist is creative freedom to be creative, feeling the freedom to create, and realizing that there is no template, that you need to discover the template yourself. And that's true in whatever field you are. I was in environmental law when we were making it up as we went along. And that was fabulous. And I really counsel anybody who has the opportunity to build something from the ground up to go for it. This is the first climate change collaboration. It was called Voyage of Discovery. It was at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is in DC, and used to run a wonderful art gallery. I don't think they do anymore. This is from 2014. I did it with Michelle Banks and Jessica, and it's about imagining a voyage to the place at the pole, the North Pole, that is where the melting is happening and advancing, right at the edge in the liminal space. Out of, my feeling that there's and this is true, it's not my feeling, there's an unstoppable process that human beings have put into motion, and we are powerless to stop. That is melting the polar ice all over the world, and that it's revealing what's underneath the ice, including living creatures. Well, we're living creatures. I don't know, there was a story in the newspaper some years ago about how Russian scientists have found 40,000-year-old, the remnants of 40,000-year-old living creatures under the ice. And I wanted to imagine what they would look like. And because we don't know, as we've set this process in motion, are all of these things being uncovered, are they benign? Are they dangerous? Are they a threat? We really have no idea. So that was the first one. It was a beautiful space, and it was a great deal of fun to work with those people. This was in that show too. They had a big, huge window that opens up into a big blank wall that curves. This is the American Association for Advancement of Science. And it's called waning albedo. The albedo is the ice-covered portion of the planet, the reflective capacity of that surface to keep the sun at bay. And pardon me, anyway, this is, 30 feet long. It's fabric, and it's intended to evoke, pardon me. I have this terrible frog in my throat today. It's intended to evoke the melting of the ice. This was the show I mentioned about the bleaching of the coral reefs. You probably all read something about how the rising heat level of the oceans are bleaching and killing coral reefs all over the world. This is about the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. And they are incredibly productive ecological habitats that are the basis of a whole string of fish and smaller creatures that are absolutely necessary for the communities that live around there that are based on fishing, and for a larger community of living things. And once they're bleached, they'll come back maybe for a year or two, but then they're permanently gone. These are wax at the bottom, the white things. That's bleached coral. I made those, and then behind that is a piece, a photograph done by Richard Dana, and Richard and I collaborated on this. This is the last one, the migration of pestilence. We had 3 rooms, and at Otis Street Arts Project, which is a great place. The first room is Sondra's room, the black room. That's the hot space, where the vectors of dangerous things start, the tropic zone. The middle room is a transitional room. Veronica Salas did that. It's fabulous. Sondra did some too. And the back room, which you'll see on the right, is mine, and it represents the kind of dumb and lucky white northern regions of the globe, largely white northern regions that are oblivious to what's coming, even though they really created the forces that are making it come. Now moving into the human flood. I have some images I call images that were critical to my initial thinking. This was one of the first images I did. It's a print. It's called The Southern Border. It's a pretty small print. I think it's self-explanatory. It's a stencil. It started me working, it started me working seriously in stencils. It's 3 different plates. This is another one. This is a bigger drawing, charcoal drawing, and I think it is also self-explanatory. And yeah, the Leaping Man. This is taken or inspired by a photograph of the train that goes through Mexico, terminates at the northern border of Mexico, southern border U.S., called by the people who are forced to ride it La Bestia, the beast. And along the way, I mean, whole families ride on the top of these train cars. And that's how they get to the US border. And this was a man leaping from one car to the next while it's in motion. And that image appears a lot in the human flood, as do the others, you know. Yeah, the people train. That's sort of one of the other basic images that appears in various forms throughout the show. This is just a schematic of how much space we had to fill. And Sondra, who is the best person to work with ever, did all this work to try, as we tried various concepts of placing this in the space, placing the show in the space. And she actually did a maquette too. I don't think I have a drawing of that. It's fabulous. I mean, a picture of that. It's fabulous. It's a little tiny AU museum with all, she made little bitty thumbnail images of each and every print, and there are a whole lot of them, and put them up around the mall of the maquette. Unbelievable. Yeah, and here you go into the show. This is what you see when you first walk into the space. On the very left, you see 3 screens with video loops that Sondra put together with narration that various friends of Sondra did, including me. We wrote narratives that we wrote about families going north, and why they did it, and what they took with them, and the decisions they had to make. And then the scrims are in the main space. And they are how many? 16, 18? No, not 16, not 18. Well, anyway, a bunch of pieces done on, we call them scrims. They're just like kind of the cheapest curtain shears that you can find. And over the summer, almost everything we did together, but these we did over the summer of 2023, and we weren't together. We were in different places over the summer. So we each made them separately and exchanged images as we did, and kind of hoped it would all fit together, although I expect Sondra did more planning on in that regard than I did. And you can see there's the leaping man on the far right. That's his biggest incarnation. And hanging that was a challenge, but we wanted to make it so you could peer through from one to the next, and you could walk through. And they're images primarily of the movement of people. And Sondra mainly did families trying to recreate family life as they moved. There's a front-on view. And then, we brought them. We didn't see them all until after the summer. And by a stroke of luck or skill, they all did, in fact, work together and tell a story. There's from the side. Lighting these was a bitch too. A bunch of these are already hung again at Salisbury University. Here we are making the prints. We made the prints in 2 separate residencies, and then also in my studio where I have a press. This was 2 weeks at Castle Hill Trudeau Center for the Arts on Cape Cod, where I've had an association for many years because we live there in the summertime. Each of these prints has both of our hands on them. So they were truly the most collaborative of collaborations, this part of it. And Sondra thought this was a cute picture of me. I'm not so sure as I look at it. But there we are, making prints. They're on all different kinds of paper because we decided we were not going to buy new paper. So we used basically what I had in my flat files, which was a lot of really good paper, but of a million different types. And this is mostly silk screen. The background is monoprint. The front is silk screen, and Sondra did some amazing silk screens that we use throughout. And clearly this is all about devastation. And the first part, well, I wonder if I show it. Let me see if I show it. Yeah, more. Burning. Now, when you first walked into the gallery and if you turned right after the scrims, you encountered what we called the scroll, the human flood scroll, which was 180, 120, I can't remember, a whole big parcel of prints that the two of us did that encircled the wall, the big curved wall at AU that separates the inside from the outside. These were hung all the way along that wall, which is a whole bunch of wall. And the first, Laura Roulet, who was our curator, who was wonderful to us. We weren't the easiest clients, she said, I'm sure, was very resolute that we should be telling a narrative, that things should develop as you walked along the length of the human flood scroll. So we started really with the destruction and sort of established the premise with prints that spoke to, environmental catastrophe. This one's pretty obvious. Here comes the people train. There were several of them, but I like the way this one turned out, looking like it's they're sort of walking along the globe. That kind of looks map-like at the bottom. And their whole families, I consider these prints with the people train as kind of hopeful, as showing that people want to move as families with their loved ones, and they will try to find a way. Yeah, and this is a complex print. I mean, this probably went through the press 5 or 6 times. I don't think it needs explanation. This one, more people train. Oh, you again. Yeah. And, these are a bit more devastating. These are a bit more brokenhearted. That the house sliding into the ocean. I was working from an image of a house sliding into the ocean in North Carolina, I think. For those who think that all this catastrophe and devastation is centered only in the poor southern parts of this world, it isn't, because that image comes from North Carolina. And this is another one. Yeah. Oh, the backpack. I want to shout out at Sondra's. I love that. That's actually collaged on there. I think it might be the only piece. No, it's not. It's the collage. The barbed wire. Yeah. So this is a bit in the background of what the scroll looked like. the horizontal scroll. This is towards the end of it, but I don't know, it's maybe 75% at the end. In the front is a piece called Clear Consumption, and that is Sondra's piece, beginning to end. And it's wonderful. I had doubts about it when she described it, but I know better to try and persuade her against it. And it came out, I really think it's one of the stars of the show. I love this. It's a shelter, form of a shelter. Those are all plastic, the little plastic boxes that those fancy tomatoes come in that cost like 75 cents a piece, which were saved over a period of time. And they're filled with shredded financial documents. And I love the statement that makes. It's like when it all goes up in flames and flood, what did you save all that crap for? And what does it really mean? It's a great piece. All right, now we're here. We're kind of at the beginning again. If you go around that curve to the right, you get to the scrims back at the beginning. And so I'm showing another part of the scroll and also these paper pieces, which were, one of the sort of really happy, people talk about happy accidents. I hate that, but they were. When I made my scrolls, I was in my house in Truro, and my little studio there is not big enough to make pieces this size. And so we took a 4x8 piece of plywood, which is just about the size of these scrims, moved it into the living room, and then covered it with paper, one layer of paper, and then covered it with a scrim, taped everything down. And then I started drawing on it, mainly with dry pigments. And then applying water and doing various layers, and that's how the scrims were made. But when they dried and I pulled them off the paper underneath was so cool. And that's what those are. The paper that was underneath when the scrims were made. I called Sondra and I said, "This is really cool. I'm going to send you a picture of what's under there." So I think we hung 4 of them. Yeah. Anyway. And the pieces in the middle are Sondra's silkscreen. These pieces along this wall are not pieces that we both had hands in. I did the big paper ones, and Sondra did these lovely, lovely silk screens. Yeah, that's the paper pieces, all of them, I guess, that we showed. No, maybe not. Anyway, that's, I guess I'm showing how I made them to somebody. Can't remember. Yeah, and here's another shot. It's, starting on the left with the pieces that I just talked about that Sondra made and moving around. And you can see the development of the print scroll on the sidewall. Well, we decided when all the other work was done, we've been thinking about doing something on the windows. I really wanted to do something on the windows from the very beginning. On the windows, I love those windows. Apparently, at the beginning, when the Katzen Center was built, the whole curving wall was covered with mirrors. I'm sorry, covered with windows. And that's not the greatest thing if you're doing an art museum, because you can't hang work on the windows. So a bunch of them were covered up, but the ones that are left, just, they're beautiful, and I really wanted to use them. So we wanted to use them. I started making these drawings. They're mainly ink, and they are some charcoal. These were just on paper and, small, 7 by 11, and a little bit bigger than that, maybe 14 by 16. And Sondra kept saying, "Make more, make more." So this was one of the first, and here are a couple more. So I kept making these and sending the digital images to Sondra, and she did her magic, put them together in sequences. Yeah, and in larger groups. And this is the opening, I think, because it's nighttime. I can see people through on the outside. This is how they came out, and they speak to me of these people behind glass who we not ignore, but we choose not to see. They see us, we choose not to see them. Um, and I think that's pretty symbolic of what the situation is. You'll see behind that one of the, I mean, on the wall, one of the sort of scrim leftovers. At the bottom is a patch of sand we did. This was Sondra's brilliant idea that we did several of these around the whole space, and they contain what we imagine people might have left behind or lost on their trip north. And then you can just see peeking through on the sides the sandbags. I hope I have a bigger picture of the sandbags, but there were a whole bunch of sandbags, not really sandbags. They were pillows. Can you imagine carting how heavy all those were if they were sandbags? It's, emblematic of trying to keep this wave of humanity away from us. And I think they also speak to the common humanity of the people involved in migration. I think, one of the signature themes of this show for both of us was to encourage people to see and recognize the common humanity in the people who are on the road. I mean, this could be us. It is right now in California. It could be you. Yeah, this is the big window space that leads to the outside sculpture garden. Yeah, I kind of love that, gotta say. Yeah, if you came at a certain point of the day, the reflections were just incredible. So outside, the concept was to show some physical artifacts of the journey and how people find shelter as they're traveling through unknown territory. So we did two kinds of shelters. The first ones are mine. They're intended to evoke these sort of handmade shelters that folks along the way create for themselves. And I made how many? 20 of them, something like that. And they contrast with, oops, they're a little comic relief, taking them in. They do stack on top of each other. Yeah. And you'll see in the back those white structures. They look very much like and are intended to represent the tent shelters that NGOs, the official non-governmental organizations and charities and stuff like that they put up for the migrants, and which many of which are still standing and still housing people. That's me in the foreground. Yeah, there they are. fabulous structures. They come all the way apart and fold up. Yeah, here's the opening night. So there you can see people looking out from the inside, or people looking, and then the people on the outside, and the structures, the shelters. This 10,000 square feet of outdoor space is, if you've been to the Katzen, sometimes it's used, not enough. And it's very, very often just this fly-blown, wind-blown, big concrete space. So activating it was an important part of the project, and one that I must say Jack Rasmussen loved. I think that's what sold him on it. And we were really happy to do that and see how, with the people on the windows, we could really make it a whole, meld the inside and the outside. Some more. These my structures, Sondra's structures were, they're like the day they were put up. We took them away, and a bunch of them are going to already are at Salisbury. Mine, I was amazed they lasted as well as they did. Those are about 6 layers, but the bottom layer is chicken wire, and then plaster, and then a full covering of plastic are the first 3 layers. And they were out there for 6 months in the rain, the sun, whatever the elements brought. And I really thought that the plaster would melt and they would just collapse in on themselves but they didn't. The outer layers, the fabric layers, they're a bit worse for wear, and any plastic on the outside is shredded. But I refurbished a bunch of them to go to Salisbury, and their structures are sound, which is absolutely amazing to me. Just chicken wire and a bit of plaster, which I made up. Okay. There's some more. I love those. All right. We've come to the end. And then just a couple comments I want to make. First, people say, who care about this issue, we're destroying the planet. And there's, of course, some truth to that, but what we're really destroying is ourselves, is the human race. The planet will go on. Just in the past 20 years, creatures have been discovered in every conceivable inhospitable place on Earth. They're called extremophiles. I did a show about them at the Athenaeum. They are in boiling water. They're in radioactive environments. They're at the bottom of the ocean where there's no oxygen. They are everywhere you look, inside volcanoes. There's life. And it will go on. I mean, it will literally inherit the Earth. So we're destroying the human race, and we're doing it with our eyes wide open. I would love for people to understand that it is the global industrialized North that's set in motion the forces that are making people leave their homes. People don't do this on whim or on the spur of the moment. They do it because they have no other alternatives. And what I'd like people to take away from this show is an understanding that that could be us. We accept the fact that it's common humanity on the common road. And I will leave it for that. I don't see a lot of reasons for hope, I'm sorry to say. Sondra castigates me for that, but at least for hope of the human race. But I do know there are some reasons. There are brilliant people, and I know this from the work I do with the Union of Concerned Scientists. There are brilliant people all over the world who have who are working on the technical solutions, and they are finding them. And if that was the only issue that is keeping us from not using fossil fuels, I would be very hopeful. But it's not that. It's what's in the human heart. It's the political leaders all over the world that we have, that will not do what has to be done for short-term political gain. And with that sad last word, I will leave you.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff, huh?
Sorry,
Sad,
I
the
guess
sad truth of things.
yeah, I mean, as I was going through, I was saying maybe I should like not be so heavy, but
I mean,
it's
yeah,
what I
you can't
say.
cater to, with the, work around the truth. And we actually had a couple artists who are making work that deals with very heavy topics. I remember one of our first presenters, Shai Fen, had very heavy artwork. I mean, it was important work that needed to be done. And I was thinking about him while you were talking about these ideas that, as artists, what is our role as artists? And Shai believed that, our role as artists was really to tackle the big issues, and that if you aren't saying something important with your work, then it's not real work. And I have qualms with that concept, but I was curious about how you kind of thought about the role of an artist, and how, and in general, like what does it mean to you to be an artist, and what is your place in this kind of spectrum?
Over the course of my career, I've moved from making wholly abstract work that was judged just in terms of, color, form, uh, and that was pleasing. And I've, as I age, which I have, and I have a whole lot of that work. It's sold fairly well, but there's a lot of it in my storage. Uh, I no longer want to make work that doesn't have meaning to me. And whether it affects anybody else, maybe it does, but it's animated by my need to tell the truth. That's how I get there. I hope that's responsive.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about like how you go from an idea or a concern or something that's happening that you want to speak about? Like, how do you go from the concept to the visual aid to, or the art itself in general? How do you go from point A
It's
to
a
the final
really
complete?
tough question.
I
um,
know.
and if it's a collaboration, we do it together. We meet a lot every week. We talk. We try out different things. We draw things. We throw stuff at the wall. Um, uh, I mean, that's the magic, right? It's the magic of making art. Is how do you move from the idea to the the concept to the reality of it. Um, and it's a process, and it's a long and sometimes arduous process. Yeah, I do a lot of collaborations because I'm convinced that the end product is so much richer. It's worth the effort, but it's a heck of a lot more effort than just going to your studio and making what you see in your own head. Uh, and it's really, really necessary to make sure as you develop it that the two or three of you are seeing the same thing in your heads. I mean, one of the first collaborative projects we did with Sondra um, and Susan Finson was at the brand new Gateway Art Center, which is beautiful, right when it was built. And we did a project called, well, I called it something different than you called it, but this was a neighborhood that was about community spirit. This is a neighborhood that was trying to remake itself out in Prince George's County, the Gateway Arts District, right to the north of DC. And we were, if not the first, one of the very first shows in the brand new space. And we decided to dedicate it to the community. And we made, it was mostly talking about what we were going to do and then making it individually and then bringing it together. And although we talked so much and we met so much every single week for a year, when we brought the stuff in to hang, we didn't all have the same idea in our heads. So we had to start thrashing it out at that point in the process. So that was a learning experience, but it's true. That's how it works for me.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I was wondering, speaking of community, did you actually bring in refugees to work on this? I mean, to participate in the creation and the thought process behind it?
You know, we thought about it while we were doing it, and I think Sondra did talk to some people, but we did not actively involve the refugee community because we really wanted to, well, from my point of view, it need to speak universally. It needs to be behind, beyond any one stream, ethnic stream, or whatever. It was really interesting when it opened. I mean, who knew what was going to be happening in the world when it opened early February 2004? But there was a lot of stuff happening in Gaza, and some people who walked in saw Gaza when they looked at the scrims. And other people saw, we had a bunch of immigrants come through, and it was an extremely moving process to them. And they saw what spoke to them from their experience or their parents' experience. Because we were trying to make it a universal statement about movement of human beings.
I think also, we talked about this a lot, and I was very concerned about not feeling up to the task of representing such a large community. And that is a lot of why we really focused our attention on this idea of it could be you. I mean, we wanted to make sure that this exhibition spoke to the people who would be coming to this exhibition, that we didn't feel that we could tell the stories of the people that this was happening to, but we could spur folks' imagination to wonder what it would be like. And
Right.
So the audio piece, for example, which you can listen to off of our website, has only one piece of 5 that talks to the experience of traveling, as if it was someone traveling. All of the other pieces that are in that audio segment have to do what you would do if this had to be your experience.
Mhm.
And so it was helping people imagine what it would be like to leave their home, what they would have to take in an emergency, if they had to leave their house under an emergency. And so we really tried to turn that around to be more about imagining what it's like for other people. So empathy became a huge piece of this with our being able to only use the experience we had. During the course of making the project, at that time, there were people being bussed up from the southern border. There was a lot of activity here in Washington, and I got a little bit involved with the migrant solidarity community. And I found that there's a real language barrier for me, right? I don't speak another language. And so while I can help in many ways, the communication with other people was a challenge.
We were also really concerned, and it seems like it was years ago, but towards the beginning, that it would be perceived as us making the migrants seem terrifying, seem frightening, and to people on the other side of the windows, and we really didn't want to do that. And Sondra at one point was kind of out on the ledge about that. Oh, people are going to accuse us of being anti-immigrant, and it's too scary. And I talked her down. um, uh, and as it happens, we did not get the response at all, but we were very conscious of not creating it.
Sort of curious, Lillian, since you are someone who is an immigrant to the community, so it's sort of interesting as to what your perspective would be, because I think if we were immigrants, I think it would be different for us. And I had talked to a couple of artists that I know who are from Mexico or Colombia at the time we were doing this, to see whether we were appropriating someone else's experience.
Well, no, I have that feeling too sometimes, like, what can we talk about? What can we show that we have not lived through? And so there are these, general, and I think that focusing on the general was probably the right way to approach it. I'm working on a project with Montgomery County currently, where I'm the resident artist from Montgomery County. And so I'm trying to, it's probably going to end up with a mural, I'm hoping, in Wheaton Mall. But I am trying to engage the underserved population as much as possible. So my idea is to create like safe living room space in the lobby of a service building where people can come in and chat and share their ideas with me, their thoughts for a better world and a better future, and just, their feelings and what they would like to see in a mural. And so have this participatory kind of event going on in a safe space. On the other hand, I feel that right now it's kind of scary because people might be too intimidated to share anything that's personal and intimate and close to their hearts with, a stranger. But as an immigrant, I'm not the immigrant that had a lot of problems. I came with my father on a visa. And although the first few years were really hard, as I waited for a green card and I waited to have a work permit, and struggling to get by, just on jobs where people didn't ask for Social Security cards. It took a while, but, I didn't come from a background of no education, a background of being persecuted, the way a lot of these immigrants that we're trying to get rid of now, and, who do so much good for our country. So I can't really compare my immigration with the immigration of people who are fleeing because it's for survival, and survival of their children, whether it's survival because of economics, political, or weather-related issues. In the end, it's all about a matter of trying to survive, and make a better life for themselves and their children. So I might be an immigrant, but I'm not in that category,
Well, I think that because the topic of privilege was so high in the, in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
That was really what we were tripping over for several years.
Yeah.
How do these two middle-aged white women have the privilege to tell this story for other people?
No.
And one of the things I found myself saying quite a bit when we did tours was, we're not asking the generation behind us to not have something that we had. We want everyone to have a beautiful, fulfilling life. And how do we make that accessible to everyone? So,
yeah.
Trisha, I know you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to say, first of all, I just totally applaud what you've done so far and what you're doing. Jordan, I think, knows I'm a little bit on the same wavelength. And since I've retired, I've really been part of looking at the environmental situation here locally in Montgomery County, and I've gradually moved out, to like your vision, which like Ai Weiwei was looking at human migration. But I ended up at a place called the Our World in Data, which is written by a gal named Hannah Ritchie and some others. She's a mathematician, statistician, and it's under the auspices of the United Nations, I believe. But until I took this global vision of what's happening in the entire planet and how little land there is left that humans have not mucked up, I've become totally panicked. And and there are people in Johann Rockstrom, I think, was one of the first, started looking at the capacity of the earth in 7 or 8 different categories. Have we exceeded what the earth resources are? And it's pretty scary. So I would urge you, and also Lillian, I'm very interested in what you had, your initiative. But and I'm going to tell you also, Ellen, about this cough you have and give you a warning on that. But anyway, look up this Our World in Data and look at what human population is going down like this. It's except in countries like Nigeria or a few other places, most countries are not reproducing at like 0.1% of the replacement rate. But we keep anyway. I won't start lecturing on it. Jordan knows I did one painting, which was of immigrants arriving on a rubber raft across the Mediterranean to Europe, that I look at every day, where I have it hanging in my bedroom office combined room, and see things I'd still like to change on it. But anyway, keep working on this whole perspective. And Lillian, work on the idea. I think your idea of localizing in conversation between people is brilliant. And I hope you get to realize that idea of having little shelters where people can come and talk about their situation. So carry on, ladies. I've become totally incapacitated with arthritis, and I can't do any large paintings, and I'm very frustrated in terms of my artistic ability to express the thoughts that you have done just brilliantly in your collaboration. But Ellen, a week ago, last Saturday, I started getting a little phlegmy cough in my throat. And that night I got a raging, painful sore throat. And I got very sick day after day. I went to the urgent, I live in a senior residence because I'm closer to 90 than 80 at this point in my life. And I'm tested negative for everything, but it's just bronchitis. But I can't get rid of it.
Well, Tricia, you can set your mind at ease about my physical situation. My doctor says, when I ask him, can I get rid of all this stuff in my throat? He says, if you figure out a way, let me know. So I don't have a disease. I just have
okay.
guts in my.
As long as you don't get the raging sore throat.
No.
I've never fever. I didn't test for any, but it's just a bronchitis. Today I feel a little bit better, but I've spent this whole week just in bed, not eating, not moving, trying hard to catch up with stuff that I just even reading. I don't have books piled up on my bed. I don't have that.
Sorry to hear that.
Going up and read it. So I'm glad to hear yours is
yeah, I'm fine.
I'm just anyway.
Becoming a frog.
Are great art expressions, because the world needs to get a global perspective of how we just aren't, we're thinking about our little town and, you know, what I can do personally. But Jordan knows that my vision is that we got to stop totally eating beef on this planet. If everybody in this planet had an equal share of beef, they could get one hamburger a week. And then it would be fair for all the 8 billion we have now and the next close to 2 billion we're expecting by 2050. So it's scary, folks. It's really scary. And how we're going to help those hordes of people that have been living for 20 years in those tent camps is beyond belief. Uneducated, no health care. It's scary for the human race. And then to have what's happened politically here, don't get me started, but hopefully we can, better heads will prevail soon and get control, because we can't let these fossil fuel billionaires and their artificial intelligence heirs take over the world. We can't let that money control us. We got to get busy politically as well as artistically. All right, I'm going to mute myself.
I do want to thank you, everyone, for being here today. And of course, Ellyn, it was incredible talk, and we're really grateful for the work that you're doing, and Sondra for hosting and also being a part of this incredible endeavor. So I speak for everyone here. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. And we're so happy to have you here to talk today. So thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Right. Yeah. And I should say thank you, Jordan. You're incredibly inspired.
And Mariana, obviously.
This is wonderful.
Don't forget that Mariana is an incredible person too, and she's helping out in this project. And even John also, thank you for all your video editing, the unsung hero of the group.
Thank you very much.
But thank you,
I just want to
guys.
say that I hope we continue this conversation, whether it's around art or beyond. I am an immigrant myself, but the most wrenching story that I would have, like Lillian said, is not my migration, but about 24 years ago, John and I actually went to a horse riding camp for a week in southern Arizona. And we were riding horses, looking at human leftovers, because people were caught. And you could see bras and children's bottles and little toys that were just left behind, and my heart sank every time we would see that, because I would try to construct the story. What happened? Why is someone's bra on the ground and my horse is stomping over it? And I just think there's so many aspects to this migration and to the notion of being caught, that I'm just inspired to try to follow up on the wonderful work that you did and are doing. So thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. Absolutely. You enrich it.
Thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with Matt Close and Erin Radke from earlier, who she had an amazing presentation back almost a year ago. She'll be hosting Matt, and they are again kind of a duo. They've collaborated on a lot of pieces and actually do painting trips abroad together. So it should be a really fun event, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks again, everyone.
Bye, everybody.